You don't have to buy shit coins. You don't have to go to the altcoin casino. Like, you could just buy Bitcoin and chill.
Hello and welcome back to the CoinStories podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Brunell, and we are talking to some of the leading voices in Bitcoin, their backstories, how they were first introduced to Bitcoin, and their take on what the cryptocurrency offers. I'm so excited to share my guest today is Jason Williams, also known as Parabolic Guy on Twitter. Jason is an entrepreneur with multiple investment exits that were greater than $500 million. He co-founded the healthcare company FastMed, and alongside Anthony Pompliano, he built the crypto-focused investment arm of Morgan Creek Capital. He's the author of the best-selling book, Bitcoin, Hard Money You Can't F With, which some call the Bitcoin standard for lay people. It introduces Bitcoin as an asset class to conventional investors and the general public. Jason is the funniest Bitcoin memer on Twitter, and we had so much fun chatting. Here's Jason. Okay, so I heard you say in a past interview that your mom was a Sicilian hairdresser and your dad was a butcher. So I want to hear about your background and where you grew up and what your life was like when you were little.
So my mom's a hairdresser, as you said. Met my dad in New York. He's actually was born in Manchester, England. And let's see. And then he took off after I was born.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. But I'm okay. I appreciate you seem concerned, but I'm okay. Mom raised me in New York, super sweet lady, did all she could, and the rest is history, I guess. Left New York, moved to Florida, started surfing, and my mother had aspirations for me to go to school and college. I wasn't really that into school, to be honest. I wanted to be a professional soccer player.
Okay.
And so that was really my core focus. And so I screwed around with that a little bit, lived in Peterborough, Canada for a while. Lived in South America, playing soccer for a little while, ended up screwing that all up, came back to the States, finished my undergraduate as a physician assistant at a school in North Carolina, was accepted to Yale after that. So I finally learned that the school thing's important and grades are important. While I was at Yale, came up with the idea for doing kind of ambulatory care, primary care, urgent care in a retail setting. Socialized that with my professors and ended up dropping out of Yale. I was already a licensed physician assistant. I was trying to do this surgical residency thing. Left and started a business when I was 25 years old called FastMed. And FastMed became the nation's second largest urgent care and primary care, privately owned, had like 1,400 employees, 400 PAs and docs. And I sold that company in total for about $500 million in 2015. So
Wow.
That's kind of a lot of the background, but I'll stop there.
Okay, wait. So I want to just take two steps back for a second, because I heard you say in other interviews that you were like this 16-year-old kid who wanted to become a physician. So
Right.
just out of curiosity, where did it go from soccer to really wanting to go into the healthcare industry?
Yeah. Well, I think that when you're poor and you're kind of from an immigrant family, you're kind of charged to become like a doctor or a lawyer. That's like an escape mechanism from poverty. So
Yep.
Education becomes really important. Although no one in my family had education, like higher education. So I thought like the answer to what am I going to be when I get older was I was just going to be a doctor. Like I would just tell people that. But I was a bag boy it was like a grocery store, and I dropped that on some older lady, because she took a look at me and said, "Hey, what are your plans?" I don't know who this person is, and I hit her with, "I'm going to be a doctor," and she said something that kind of was really important in my life. And that was, well, what are you going to do to become a doctor? Mm-hmm. So, that kind of stuck in my tiny brain, and I carried that around for a little while because I think she saw I was a screw up. And even just from my bagging of groceries, she was able to glean that. But, I carried that around, and what are you willing to do to become a doctor resonated as I got a little older, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, and doing not quite the right things with my soccer career.
Right. Well, wow. The screw up that you went to Yale and had a $500 billion.
Yeah. Look, it gets real serious though. Like all those options when you're young and everyone's telling you how great you are and you believe you're drinking it. Like, I was in that zone. So, but when the options started to collapse really quickly, right? Like this soccer thing's not going to work. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, like I'm not focused and disciplined enough to pull that off. I'm going to move back to America. I'm going to have to get serious about school now because I don't want to be an auto body mechanic, which is fine, but that's not, I don't think what my mom was endeavoring, So, I just got serious and I found out that I was capable of learning and formulating kind of a trajectory that was acceptable and got accepted to Yale, and the rest is pretty cool.
Yeah, I relate to you so much because I'm from an immigrant family. I was born in Poland. We moved to the U.S. when I was 5. My parents obviously wanting a better life for their kids. And so it really resonates with me also what you said about when you're an immigrant, you just kind of feel like you need to make something happen for yourself. And my parents totally wanted me to become a doctor, a lawyer. And gosh, right. It must have been a mini tragedy when I went into media. But in school, you were on a great path, right? You would have had a great salary. And I know in interviews you've said that you could have had the BMW and could have gone that way. But what gave you that sort of, courage to take a leap of faith to start this retail urgent care?
Yeah, it's a great question. So while I was at Yale, and I really did find like it wasn't shtick when I said I wanted to be a doctor. Like I thought it was, like I was giving people a cool answer, but it actually aligned pretty well with my kind of core philosophies and kind of where my heart was, which I do love people. I did want to do something that had a big impact on society. I was a hospice volunteer, so I had developed this deep sense of empathy and an understanding of like the end of life as a young person. So you put that all together, and then I am at Yale, and I don't believe I should be there, by the way. So again, at this point, I'm kind of humbled. I still have confidence, but it's in check now. And so I'm walking around the halls of Yale and I'm seeing just things that I didn't expect. Angry patients in the emergency department, physicians that aren't quite happy with their career, nurses that are nuns that are really mean. Not anything against nuns or nurses. It's more against mean people. And people aren't quite doing the things that I thought, like do all you can, do whatever it takes, be empathetic, loving, let's take care of people, lift up the impoverished, the sick, the elderly. These are the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I didn't quite see all that. And then I thought, like, man, I'm a physician assistant. I didn't quite get to space. I kind of got into low orbit, right? So I didn't become a doctor. I'm like a physician assistant. And I'm thinking to myself, what does that really mean? Am I like a middle manager? I'm completely expendable. I'm not in charge of my future whatsoever. They could fire me if things don't go well. So I'm going to be like a moderately well compensated guy. That didn't feel good, to be honest. And I think that's what compelled me to consider owning my own business. I started to look at what was close to me, which was this poorly functioning emergency department. And that's when I said, like, oh, well, what if I treat patients like customers and give them access and not set the whole program up to make my golf schedule work, but actually like cater to the patient's needs. So the 365 day a week, a year, 12-hour a day practice, bolstered by physician assistants that offered 80% of what you'd find in an emergency department, was born. I socialized that with a physician whom I respected at Yale. He was a surgeon named Dr. Flock. He said, "Hey, good ideas don't come too often. Jason, you should do that." I said, "I'm going to do that." So I called my mom and said, "Hey, I'm dropping out." Yeah, it's like the exact disastrous.
Yeah.
You don't know, you can hear it, right? "Hey, Mom, I'm dropping out of Yale to go and buy a post office." And she's just, the tears and it's enough. It's like, same old thing. But I did it this time.
Yeah, that's my mom's reaction when I bought Bitcoin, actually. So,
tears and like, what are you doing?
Okay, so I want to hear how you kind of created your first one, right? So you bought a post office, you took out a loan, and you envisioned these kind of being next to Starbucks. Can you talk about just like that, the beginning of your business?
Yeah, so it was a retail play on healthcare. So the first iteration wasn't exactly the prototype, but there was a post office in this town called Hope Mills that became available. It came up in an auction, and a bank gave me enough money to buy it. So it kind of met some of the criteria I had in my mind. Like, it was a destination that everyone went to. It wasn't near the hospital. It was kind of where people lived. If you can think about where they put post offices, they put post offices where people are. So it was a natural thing to buy and place FastMed. So I did just that. Bought the post office, hired a bunch of my college friends that were in the area, because this was in North Carolina, and we got into it. I practiced medicine there, and then worked nights in the emergency room to pay the bills, and it was just a hit. Now, after 3 or 4 months, the business was cash flowing well. I was still working like a crazy person, and I continued to do that for 2 years. But this is a story of, I had developed the capacity for kind of a low time preference activity. It wasn't all like gimme now. I was in it for the long haul, that road less traveled, and so after about 15 months or so, it was time to continue to expand. So that was really it. I wanted control of my own life. I wanted to own a business. Being a physician assistant was super cool, and I was super proud of that, but it didn't afford me the control that I wanted over my own destiny. Like, I couldn't imagine being an employee and doing all I can and it not being enough just because someone else wasn't doing all they can.
Right. And it wasn't always easy though, right? Because you found yourself in a position where you were the boss, but you were also subordinate to the physicians that you were hiring, right? Can you talk about that? Because I'm sure it wasn't always just, it didn't just take off that easily, and you were expecting it to be hundreds of locations and this massive, exit.
That's a really intuitive question. I appreciate that. That relationship is fundamental to what a physician assistant is. So it's a dependent practice. You're a dependent practitioner. So being part of a team is super easy for me. And so it's okay if I'm not the quarterback. I can play my position. So that's how I approach this PA doc relationship. As long as the doc understands that we're a team, right? He's not my boss. We're a team. Because I was the boss. But we're a team. And it's really weird when, in terms of the social hierarchy, the academic credential hierarchy, he's up here, I'm down here. But in certain respects, we had to work very well together. And that didn't always work, even till today. It's a very difficult relationship. It takes a tremendous emotional high IQ to navigate. And so over the 15 years that I ran FastMed, it was always a struggle to not focus on us, focus on the patients. If we're all doing the right thing, it's never like a doctor PA thing, right? We're focused on the problem. So, but egos are there. And so it was certainly not a direct line to success in any way.
Well, obviously you built this company up to be something you're probably your wildest dreams couldn't even imagine. So I want to hear how you got to that massive exit. But first, just out of curiosity, because I think all of us can acknowledge, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, that our healthcare system in this country is so messed up. It's so expensive. What did you learn from your experience just in the industry, whether it's about insurance or just patients and patient care? I mean, what's the big takeaway that you'd like people to know?
Yeah, I mean, it's too much information to even get into. So much information that it's probably my next book. I really do want to write like the dark web of healthcare, because it really is a dark, like if you think about the dark web, or you think about the things that went on in early days of Bitcoin, that's healthcare. It's that nefarious. Like it's that kind of mind-blowingly inefficient. It's that wildly corrupt. It's all of those things. So, like I'd love to write about insurance credentialing, RVUs, which are incentive-based compensation models for physicians, which means if I order more tests and do more procedures, I get paid more, which doesn't necessarily mean I'm giving you better quality healthcare. There's just so many things that you learn over time. And I did not want to participate in those mechanisms. I built FastMed in such a way that it compensated us for dealing with complexity, but it didn't really drive our EBITDA to do tests. So I would negotiate positions with the insurance companies to pay me my cost, essentially, for radiography and laboratory medicine, but pay me more for the complexity of medical decision making. If I was handling things that were saving healthcare money by placing a patient in the right environment, practicing at the top of my licensure, and avoiding, hospital admissions or bounce back care, then I should be paid for that. And I was pretty able to get the payers to do those things.
Wow.
And we were doing the same. If you ended up in an emergency room with a typical diagnosis that FastMed dealt with, we were saving like 10x.
God,
it's huge.
I would totally read that book, because I've reported on like medical debt, and I think it's a scary world when you think the more that someone prescribes or the more procedures they do, the more money they make, and you don't necessarily benefit. And we're just piling on pharmaceutical drugs on people, when really what the best doctors are probably exercise, less stress, Bitcoin, good food.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so
we have I believe in the near future, you're going to see value-based care become the next moment. It may happen during this administration, or it may be too big of a hurdle to overcome. But value-based care is cool, because it really incentivizes the physicians and pays them on performance. So like if you're a diabetic and your hemoglobin A1C is 9 and it stays 9, and that's not normal, that's high, the physician's going to get penalized if you're assigned to a medical practice and a physician, but you're a super utilizer of care, you're going all over the place, that physician is going to be penalized for that. So it puts the responsibility of your health and your decision making on the physician, which is kind of interesting. Look, we're all responsible for our own decisions, but I certainly don't want to pay a doctor for ordering unnecessary tests on me.
For sure. For sure. No, that's so interesting. Okay, so let me see if I have this right. In 2010, you had your first exit, but you stayed with the company for 5 years. And then you had this like 10-year non-compete. So when you ultimately left in 2015, you couldn't do anything in the healthcare space for another 5 years, but you felt this pull to not retire and sit on a beach, but still work and create another startup. So what was that journey like?
Yeah, so it's a great question. In 2010, we brought on capital from a smaller venture firm called Comvest Capital, based out of New York and West Palm Beach, Florida. And at that time, because of the amount of money they gave me, I had to sign a 10-year non-compete. So in 2010, that 10-year non-compete started, and that non-compete stated I couldn't do anything in ambulatory healthcare, non-appointment-based healthcare, telemedicine, all kinds of. It was very far-reaching. But as a young person, it was such an enormous amount of money. I took it, right? I took the deal. So I stayed with the company for 5 years, which was really hard. It was hard for a number of reasons. When you're a bit subordinated in the company that you've run your whole adult life, and they put a bunch of handlers in to kind of watch me, and a lot of threats too. They were like, "Look, we're going to give you all the money to realize your dream here, but if you look left or right with indecision, we're going to fire you." And they had full authority to do that. A professional venture-led board, real CFOs, older folks, with gray hair in the organization. It was just different. I had a bunch of my college buddies, and we were, playing, we had Nerf guns in the office. That all went away. But how was it? A great learning experience for me, because over those 5 years, I grew up. I learned how to communicate more effectively, be very specific with the things that I'm saying. And it felt good to not be constantly raising capital. And so, we grew enormously. We went from 74 employees in 2010 to 1,400 employees in 2015. So you think about that, that's like blitz scaling. And then we sold the company to a Boston-based private equity firm called Abry Partners. So I still had 5 more years left on my non-compete.
Wow.
It was cool because they said I could have a full exit and I didn't have to stick around with the company. That was really scary. They told me on a Thursday. I packed up my office on the Saturday that weekend, and I was done.
Wow. I mean, just out of curiosity, what was that feeling like? Coming from an immigrant background where something I always dream of is just being able to take care of my parents, and you having that kind of that just day where you have this massive payout. I mean, I just can't imagine what that feels like.
Yeah, it was super terrifying, to tell you the truth, because I didn't expect them to tell me that I could just walk. I figured there would be another job, right? And they kind of offered me a job I could not accept. It was that crappy. So I remember the person who told me like what was going on, like, "Hey, you're going to get all your money. You don't have to stick around. You could take this bad job if you want." And I was like, "Well, I don't think I want to do that." And it's funny because the man who was telling me was he was the chief operating officer. His name was Kevin Blank. And he was 6'7". I'm pretty tall myself, but he was a big man. And so when he delivered the news to me, I go, "Well, I guess that's it. This was my whole life's work." I said, "Kevin, I don't know." I said, "Can I hug you?" So I think we hugged. And then I went to lunch.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like in like a kind of a dreamland, like because I was having like Lamborghini and Rolls Royce dreams. Like I was floating on yachts, and that's where my mind was. Yeah,
I bet.
That's where my mind was.
Amazing. Oh gosh, that would be amazing. Okay, so we're starting now to get to the point in your journey where you're about to learn about Bitcoin, right? You hadn't yet. So tell me how that all happened, because I know you also met Pomp around this time, right?
Yep. So actually, the first time I heard about Bitcoin was in 2012.
Oh, wow.
And it was this kid, Will Basham, who was a marketing person at FastMed. He actually came into my office, and he wasn't doing very well. as the marketing person. So this sucks for me because I felt it was a continuation of his lack of focus on his job. When he came in, he's like, "Hey man, you need to look into this magic internet money. The Winklevoss twins are talking." And I was like, "Will, you need to focus on occupational health care and get those urines flowing." Like I didn't even hear anything he said. Shame on me. Shame on me. I wish I would have listened to Will Basham that day, but I didn't. 2015, June, I'm out of FastMed, and I had written some patents in robotics and synthetic polymer science, and came across some cool stuff in that space, and had an idea to work in renewable energy. But I didn't want to do solar, wind, tidal, geothermal. All of it was heavily subsidized. It was hard for me to be the free market capitalist that I am. Like, I just want to build businesses that drive profit, and I don't want to go out and get grants and loans and federal this and support that. Like, I just want to put my head down and build stuff. So this business was really cool. It took trash tires that they paid me to take. It was like 4 or 5 cents a pound. And as a waste management business, super easy. Deliver the tires, weigh the tires, invoice them. And then I had this cool technology that stated I could fill these reactors with all these whole tires, and over a 16-hour time period, I could heat them and recover the constituent parts that they were made from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was the claim. There was this really easy waste management business on the front end that I could pro forma very simply. In North Carolina, there are about 12 million tires a year that are disposed of. So it was a massive opportunity. I didn't have to go anywhere. My plant could only process like 1.5 million tires a year at its capacity. So wow. I was like, man, I could build 12 of these plants in North Carolina. And then if I can pull this technology off, this could be super disruptive. Like, I'm making power. I have these liquid fuels, solid fuels, thermal energy, and I'll do something with it. Sell it to the grid, come up with maybe boil water. I don't know. But there were so many cool opportunities on the whiteboard. I wanted to pursue it. Wow. So I started to pull a team together of just absolute heavy industrial folks, like heavy machine operators, welders, mechanics, that kind of stuff. Then I brought together a bunch of engineers, synthetic polymer science, robotics guys, programmable logic controller guys, coders. Then I brought together a bunch of energy guys, and we lived in a field for 2 years. We brought the technology over from Italy and got it running. So that's like the story of PRTI. That business continues to run today. We're looking at expanding plants up and down the East Coast, putting a plant in Switzerland, potentially in the Netherlands, like a lot of really cool stuff there. But and then the best use of the power was to mine cryptocurrency. Wow. So that's where we, Pomp and I came up with that idea. So the two of us met around that time, like 2015. And
through a guy who knew Mark Cuban, right?
Right. So Pomp had 2015, 2016, something like that. He had just left Snap. He was working there and moved back to Raleigh, North Carolina. And so Mark Cuban had said, it was a mutual friend there, and said, hey, you guys need to get together. So we met, hit it off really well, decided to start a small fund. And through the evolution of our friendship and working together and raising capital in that fund, it was called Full Tilt Capital. We came up with so many cool ideas. And one of them was leveraging PRTI to mine cryptocurrency. We were driving to Charlotte, North Carolina together to buy a McDonald's. And he was like, man, you got to look at this mining thing. It's pretty cool. Like, cryptocurrencies are real. This Bitcoin thing is real. And I was just like, I heard about that before. And we spent about 6 hours going back and forth on this, and then just jumped down the rabbit hole and never came back out. So that's kind of the beginning of PRTI and our journey into cryptocurrency.
Wow. And so when you were talking about it with Pomp and you were deciding to really go in on this, you believed in it. How much was it at the time? And were you putting a significant amount of your money into it?
Yeah. So Ethereum was like $45,
Oh my gosh.
and Bitcoin was maybe 1,500, 12 to $1,500. So is that early? Yeah. So I'm a hands-on person. And and I think a lot of people who have resources take this approach to Bitcoin. They're like, yeah, I can buy Bitcoin, but why don't I mine it? And that's what I did. I was like, I can buy these things or I can mine it. I had this power source, which was pretty cool. So we actually bought a bunch of ASICs and a bunch of GPU rigs and learned how to assemble the GPUs. We had a close friend that lived here in North Carolina named JP Barrick. He was maybe 17, 18 years old at that time. He was at NC State. So he was mining in the dorm rooms and paying kids to put miners under the beds in their dorms. He's a really smart guy.
Wow.
And so he helped us configure the first mine. And then from there, it was throw all the power I could make into mining. And we mined Ethereum and Bitcoin. So we used GPUs and we mined with ASICs.
So I want to kind of move to the philosophy. I want to hear your philosophy on Bitcoin, because what was it about it when you started talking to people like Pomp? What was it about this currency that attracted you and made you feel like this could be a future reserve currency? And how did you learn about it?
Yeah, so I think two things happened in parallel. I was the CEO of PRTI, so I was trying to correctly monetize and right-size that business so it could scale and I could sell it. And thinking about ways to monetize power, I could sell the power into the grid for about 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour, or I could use it for some parasitic load. There are energy hogs on this planet, concrete factories, data centers, etc. I had Google. They came to look at the plant because Google had aspirations of being 100% renewable off the grid. Like Google is one of the world's largest buyers of wind energy in the world. So they were asking me, well, how much power can you produce? And I was like, well, how much power do you need? And like, it was kind of this weird dance because they didn't want to disclose, the amount of power that these data centers use. And I was trying to not get swallowed alive by this giant business. And anyway, what I came to understand after the meeting was I'll make my own data center, right? I'll make my own data center. I'll mine cryptocurrencies. Pomp and I and the team will learn about it as we go. And that was the one track. The other track was we had this fund. And the fund was really an early stage venture fund. It had about $18 million in it. And we invested that money in a number of strategies. But what we saw happening while we were deploying that money was a lot of the real smart young people were going into blockchain technologies, and a lot of the really smart money was being invested in the space. So in 2016, 17, we were seeing those two phenomena happening while I was building PRTI. All of that kind of hardened my conviction and our conviction to kind of go all in the space. So through mining, I learned about custody. I learned about tax law. I learned about kind of, what these cryptocurrencies claim to do. And so my entry point was Ethereum, but when I found Bitcoin, it became like an incredible moment for me because when you start to understand money and you're on the hunt for good money, and good money meaning it's enough, like, is your money enough? And that we can spend a little time on what that actually means. The US dollar is just not good money. It's not enough. And so I am managing my family money that I made. I'm managing a business, PRTI. I'm managing other people's invested money. through Pomp and I's relationship at Full Tilt. So you go through this kind of responsibility stack, and Bitcoin started to really punch a hole into things that I believed, my professors believed, I was historically taught. And so I think that was the beginning of my love affair with Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, I want to talk to you more about your views of money, because I think most people, something I talked about with Pomp even, is that a lot of people don't have a financial education. Unless you go into economics or finance, you don't know that much about the idea of hard and sound money and Keynesian economics and all that. So can you talk a little bit about your views on that and Bitcoin as a savings technology and why you wanted to write your book?
Yeah, so this is the funny thing. And it's probably why I did not want to be a PA once I became a PA. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe in a world where I was making a certain amount of money and I didn't have the security. And that security wasn't just about money, but follow me here for a second. You know, with money, we trade our most valuable asset, time, to get money. And if you're a plumber and you're good at your job, you can make a lot of money. But can you retire as a plumber? Even as a guy who owns a plumbing business, I mean, you can make enormous amounts of money. But I never see a plumber just be a plumber. See, the plumber realizes when he's saving money and he has a business, whatever, that he has to do something with the money, right? So he's not just going to leave his money in a checking account. That doesn't seem smart. Nobody would advise that. And a savings account at 0.04% APY or 0.4%, some ridiculous low interest, isn't going to create the kind of returns that he needs to just beat inflation, let alone get him to retire. So the plumber has to do unplumber-like things. He has to become a real estate expert. He has to get in the stock market, right? He has to get into early stage venture investing. You know, it's like the plumber is now got a diversified portfolio of assets, and he has a money manager, right? This guy in flippy floppies who's at the beach all the time playing golf and setting up lunch meetings with you because he's managing your money, right? Win or lose, he's getting paid, right? Sure. So you have all this weird stuff going on to the plumber. With Bitcoin, you can actually hold it, and because of its programmatic monetary policy, because of its scarcity, because of its divisibility, because of its transferability, all of these really important things, it's enough. Like, you don't have to do anything. Like, you can just buy Bitcoin and chill. Like, you don't have to buy shit coins.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to the altcoin casino and you don't have to do any of that stuff. Like, you could just buy Bitcoin and chill. I have all kinds of real estate, and I have all kinds of illiquid venture, and I have Bitcoin. And all I want to do is get rid of all of that real estate and all of that illiquid venture. I just want as much Bitcoin as I can have because I just want to chill. Like, I don't want to chase that anymore. It's a game I can't win. And I'm not even saying I have stocks, because I don't. I have some GBTC, and I think that I'm getting some shares of Coinbase that have become illiquid since Coinbase, or become liquid since Coinbase went public, or they listed. But Bitcoin is such an amazing invention, one of the most amazing inventions humans have ever arrived at. It's the hardest money we've ever created as a species. It's like alien technology. And so coming out of January 2020, I had on my bucket list to write a book. I was surfing in Peru in March, and then the world was lit on fire. I just escaped South America and returned home on like March 13th, 14th. And then I was relegated to this room for 15 months.
Yeah.
Right where I am today. So it was a perfect opportunity to use that time to study monetary policy, continue to invest my resources in acquiring more Bitcoin, and write a book.
Yeah. Well, I think actually the pandemic was sort of the perfect storm for Bitcoin to gain some more mainstream awareness and for people to start to really get curious about global monetary policy and the value of their dollar, because obviously the debasing has been happening for a while. Quantitative easing, it's not like it wasn't happening before 2020. But how do you think just sort of the money printing that was sparked by the pandemic, how do you think this sort of creates an environment that is perfect for the value position of Bitcoin?
Yeah. I hope that Bitcoin can exist without the complete collapse of the United States. So I'm not one of those people that's like, even Max Kaiser, he takes it really far. Like he thinks that like, oh, the US is going to lose global reserve currency status by like October 2021. It's like, these things are so monumental. You start to play it out, and it's like, is this World War III, Max? Is that what we're talking about? But there are so many things that have happened since 2020 over the last year and 4 or 5 months that have played into the reason that Bitcoin's at whatever it is today. The amount of money printing that's gone on, the threats of inflation that are potentials, the change of our administration. You had kind of a whipsaw from what Donald Trump was doing to now what Joe Biden's doing. You have all of these extremes. I'm not taking a position. I'm just stating fact. People are unemployed. We saw all of the jobs wiped out since like the 1930s, the Great Depression during the 2020 pandemic. You see the invention. It's not really an invention, because if you travel, you have one of these little cards, and this card has things like meningitis and yellow fever, and now it's going to have COVID vaccine. But you have a lot of people who are like, I'm not carrying around a vaccination passport, right? So you have this movement to vaccinate the world against the COVID virus. And what is COVID? And mRNA vaccines, what are those going to do? And was this engineered? You've got all these different things, and it's not stopping. It's not stopping. We burn down the economic machine in the world, from the devastation around oil price collapse to what we did to small businesses in this country. And I don't know how they're surviving. You're in LA. LA has to be the weirdest place in the world during this time. Like, you couldn't go inside I can only imagine what it's like. But I'm just trying to make a point. We may be coming out of that, but we will never be the same. Like, the world coming out of COVID is decentralized. I don't think we go back to mass office spaces. I think people are moving all over the country, all over the world. They're going to work remotely. I don't think academic institutions will ever be the same. Like, I think remote learning is here to stay. I think that we put technology adoption on like hyperdrive in terms of its like fast forwarding. So how does that all affect Bitcoin? I think it plays right into the thesis. Again, whoever this alien group or person was that launched Bitcoin on our human species, it's like the craziest thing ever. I've been around for what I've been able to see for disruptive innovations in my life. 1, the recognizing and actualizing FastMed. 2, the internet. 3, Bitcoin. 4, I'm not going to tell you. So, like, this is that big. Bitcoin, a new money system, this peer-to-peer network, the store of value, the fact that its supply is capped, the fact that you and I can own this thing, and we're out in front of those who could own it all, right? They could buy it all. It's amazing. And so we come off like kooks and freaks and like some kind of cult when we talk about Bitcoin. It really is crazy. Like I sit in Clubhouse 6 hours a day with a group of like Bitcoin maximalists,
Yeah.
And we just talk about the same thing over and over again, like crazy people. But that's where I am.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love the memes. I want to talk to you about those. But first, I do want to ask you, since you touched on that idea of, how is the average person in this pandemic really making it through, the people that own the small businesses? What do you think it's going to take for the average person to understand and go in on the idea of Bitcoin, or, the folks that are a little bit older that aren't as comfortable with technology, maybe? Because it seems like on the younger side, people are ready for it. They can't necessarily afford a house because of how our economic system has evolved over the last, couple of decades. So their parents owned houses and millennials don't as much as their parents did. So, how do we get like the masses to adopt Bitcoin, in your opinion?
Yeah. So this is probably an extreme thought. Think 50% of what I'm going to say, I haven't checked out with anyone before, so I reserve the right to change my mind if this doesn't make sense. I think a lot of people missed it. Unfortunately, I think a $55,000 Bitcoin is unachievable for 99.9999% of people on this planet, and I think that the discussion around 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin is hard for people to understand. Like, people want to own a whole thing. Like, you don't go to the store and say, I want 1/4 of a banana. It just would be weird. Like, if you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're breaking apart bananas, they'd be like, hey, get out of here, crazy person. So that's why you've got all the shit coining going on.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, if Bitcoin was at $100 right now, no one would talk about Dogecoin and XRP and all this other nonsense. It's a distraction. But because most people are priced out, and I believe that most people are priced out, the maxis and a lot of people who are pushing hard for Bitcoin will say, no, it's early. No, it's not early. $55,000 Bitcoin is unachievable for old people, middle class, poor people. The very, very rich will speculate around the fringe here, right? But if you want to buy 10 Bitcoin, it's $550,000. Now, 10 Bitcoin may be an enormous haul. I've been around too long. Mm-hmm. So 10 Bitcoin doesn't seem like a lot of Bitcoin. But you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm too far gone. I'm like a boomer with my coins. I got the boomer coin, right? That's the meme. Yeah. The Bitcoiners are we have the boomer coin.
Yeah.
It's just it's gotten to the point where owning a Bitcoin should be everyone's sole focus. Mm-hmm. Because I really do believe in the next 4 years, 5 years, a Bitcoin's going to be worth $3 to $5 million.
And do you
I really do believe it to be that big,
yeah,
that expensive? So, like, sell your house, sell your car, sell your shoes, and buy Bitcoin. Not financial advice.
Yeah, no, I get it. Are you like Pomp, where you think it could even get to like $100 trillion market cap?
Yeah, of course. Like, I think and I was a victim of this rhetoric, and the people listening to me were a victim of this rhetoric. Like, I love to take Bitcoin and put it against like the top 10 listed companies in terms of their market cap. I would put minerals and metals there as well. And then I would say, like, oh, Bitcoin flipped Facebook, and Bitcoin flipped this. And, Bitcoin's about to flip silver. And eventually Bitcoin will get to, a $10 trillion market cap and flip gold. Bitcoin's so much bigger than that, because if it gets to like 10 to 15% of the money supply, you're talking about these numbers and I think it can happen. So that's why I'm so like, it's not even passion. Like, I feel anxious for people that don't own Bitcoin. Like, you have to do something. You have to get as much as you can, because you're going to wake up one day and Bitcoin's going to be $100,000.
Yeah.
And then 150,000, and then it's going to be 500,000. and boomer coin guys like me will be sitting there with their Bitcoin, just chilling,
Yeah.
just chilling.
Okay, I'm gonna start to wrap up. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I think you and some of the other folks on Twitter that are so awesome. You have such a big following. You're doing a lot for Bitcoin and people gaining awareness. And I think part of it is that sort of the meme culture. You guys all have a great sense of humor. You've mentioned before, it feels a little bit like a cult, but everyone wants to be a part of this cult. Can you talk about like that community? Because I get such a kick out of your tweets, super funny, all your emojis. So what has that done for just like the community of Bitcoin?
Yeah. So if you've been in the Bitcoin space long enough, and I've been through, 2 of these halving cycles, I believe 2, it's painful, right? It's very lonely when Bitcoin's down because the world descends upon you and says, I told you that you were wrong and this is a terrible thing and you've lost all your money. 80% of your money is gone, right? So we kind of go inside ourselves and we start to think about things differently, right? But when Bitcoin like rises, that happiness that comes back, right? So for me and American Hodl and Mrs. Hodl and P and Pomp and Peter Schiff and Elon Musk and Dave Portnoy, like this world of us that we all respect each other very much, but we have very different opinions. The maxis, the plebs, I'm in a gray zone, my friend, because I want to be like them, but they know that I've done some things in my past that don't entitle me to that nomenclature.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Let's not get into that. But I will meme someone who does something ridiculous with their Bitcoin. So for me, telling Dave Portnoy he has paper hands and lettuce hands and spaghetti hands
and Elon
puzzle
Musk
hands. Yeah, olive nuts. Right. Sorry. And I love it. Look, it's a good time. It actually helps. If you're really not trading Bitcoin and you're not participating in stocks and bonds and all this other nonsense, and you're retired, because a lot of the guys that I know don't really work. They just have a lot of Bitcoin and they're young. They're in their early 30s. They have young families. We shitpost all day.
Yeah.
And we just make memes.
I know. I think it's so funny. And yeah, seeing like Peter get so excited when there are the dips, Peter Schiff. I secretly think he must be holding Bitcoin, although he has a son for that, I guess, right? But yeah, and it's funny. Even at my work, everyone knows that I have Bitcoin. Most people are super skeptical. And it's like on the rough days, they're like, ooh, Natalie, ooh, bad day, huh? And then on the great days, the all-time highs, it's like, did you, what was that site you got Bitcoin on? Could you send me the referral code? It's like that FOMO, right? It's hilarious. But there are a lot of naysayers out there. So I just wanted to kind of have your opinion on some of the big arguments, right? That government's going to ban it. It's going to be taxed, unrealized, gains tax possibly in the future. And the climate, argument that it consumes too much energy. What do you think is the biggest threat to Bitcoin? And what do you think about all those arguments against it?
Yeah, so I think Bitcoin's reached escape velocity. So all of those talk tracks are so stupid and uninteresting to me. I'll talk to you about them, but they're anyone who lobs those out is going to get eviscerated by my wolves and my friends who again spend a lot of time thinking about this. Bitcoin wastes energy. Moralizing energy is one of the most ridiculous things that I entertain or I get confronted with. Saifedean recently quantified the amount of power that washing machines use, which it's like massive gigawatts of power. So if you want to talk about wasteful energy, wash your clothes by hand and stop using dishwashers and stop using washing machines. I mean, that's the kind of silly discussions that we have. And if you want to be honest, Bitcoin is causing a renaissance and an expansion of renewable energy and use of stranded power resources around the world. because mining, through its design, to be most profitable, you want to pay the least you can for power and be the most efficient in regards to managing the thermodynamics of the system.
Right.
And to do that, you can't pay a high price. You can't be inefficient. So you, by nature, innovate efficiencies around power utilization. It's like so stupid. Like, let's send all those people who think Bitcoin wastes power into the woods. You go and don't come back. Just go into the woods. There's a whole group of academics. I call them like the bubble gang, and I debate on Fox with them. There's Peter Schiff, Nouriel Roubini, these Dennis Gartman. He's another one. These guys are professionally wrong, and that's what they're good at. Over their old, long lives, they've just been wrong. So they've all blocked me. Talib, he blocked me as well. Francis Coppola, the infinite pizza lady, she blocked me. I mean, they're just hysterical. But I think their arguments are ridiculous. And that's why I keep these glasses. Like, when people start to... they start to talk to me about like moralizing power. Like I just give them this look. Like this is who you're talking to. Like joke's on you.
But do you think there's any threat? I mean, obviously, like Pomp was really talking a lot about how it's the most transparent network. There's so much security. When you look at in terms of the question of fraud, way more is happening on the traditional bank system. So, but is there any threat that you find?
No, again, like I think I think most lucid, intelligent politicians, those who are also working in central banks and leading in monetary policy, understand that they can't stop Bitcoin. They can't regulate it out of existence. Those who try to ban it or make it hard to use accelerate adoption amongst the citizens and only displace this spring of development to some other country. Guys like me, beautiful looking men like me will move where the Bitcoin is. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, okay. So price prediction for December 31st, 2021.
Oof. This is a good one. Cause I have out of the money calls that expired Jan 1, 2022, $300,000.
300,000.
Yes.
Wow. Well,
300,000.
I certainly hope so. By the way, are you big into the stock to flow chart?
Love it. Yeah. Plan B, the thing that sucked about that chart is it kind of got invalidated because co-integration, that mechanism failed. So you may ask him about that. That's a Nobel Prize winning math formulation. So when they applied co-integration to Plan B's model, it worked. And so that was super exciting, but I think something happened. They disproved the co-integration, but I love it. It's still working very nice. And we've raised a lot of money using Plan B's charts. And it's a fantastic chart. And I think Plan B will agree that all these charts are often wrong, but they're useful.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. If you had to make a TikTok video for 30 seconds, it was going to be your elevator pitch for Bitcoin to go viral. What would you say and do?
Yeah. So a little known fact about me is when I encounter wild animals, I always chase them. So it would be a culmination because I have these videos of me chasing wild animals, and I would just when I catch them, the Bitcoin price would just flash. Like, I got the bear, Bitcoin. Got the rabbit, Bitcoin. Deer, got it, Bitcoin. Awesome. It would be the greatest TikTok video ever.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Coin Stories. I'd love to connect with you if you have questions or guest requests, so feel free to get in touch on Twitter @NatBrunell or Instagram @Natalie Brunell. Take care till next time.